Hello, and welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'm Aaron Chapin, president of the Pennsylvania State Education Association, and I'm serving as your host this week. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at the effort to fix Pennsylvania's unconstitutional public school funding system, where it is and where we need to go from here. And it's road construction season. We're going to get an update on the Pennsylvania highways and bridges. There's a lot of them in Pennsylvania. All that and more coming right up.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host.
In February of 2023, the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court ruled that the state's public schools are unconstitutionally funded. And since then, elected officials have been working and focusing on fixing those problems identified by the court and putting every student on a level playing field. There's a lot of information that we need to really get out there, and to help us, we've got Dr. Mark Price. He's Director of Research for School Funding at the Pennsylvania State Education Association. We also have Sam McNally, who's a 7th grade teacher at Manheim Township, and she's also the president of the Education Association there. So, Mark, Sam, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
So, Mark, let's start with you. Can you briefly explain how we got here? Essentially, there was the school funding lawsuit in the Commonwealth Court a few years ago. What did that court find out? What did the court rule about that?
Well, as you move from community to community across Pennsylvania, the court observed there was a different amount of resources available to help students succeed in each school. And in particular, the court heard testimony that students were being educated in dilapidated buildings, that students in many cases didn't have access to courses in mathematics and science, and in particular, students in low-wealth school districts didn't have enough qualified teachers to help them meet their needs. And so the court ruled that those disparities were in violation of the Constitution. But in making the ruling, they didn't specify the solution. What they put forward was they asked the General Assembly and the governor to come together to talk to parents, to talk to school boards, and talk to teachers, and come up with a solution.
So then the Basic Education Funding Commission convened, and there were hearings all around the state. I think there were double digits of hearings. What came out of those hearings?
Well, out of those hearings came a pretty straightforward solution. What the commission did was they looked at schools that the Department of Education had identified as successful schools that had educated their students well, and they asked the question, what are the resources that those schools have available? And then looking across the Commonwealth, any school that didn't have the same level of resources was identified as having an adequacy gap. And when you sum those up across all the school districts, that's about $4.6 billion that the commission said the Pennsylvania needs to pay to those districts over the next 7 years.
So that takes us to last year. Governor Shapiro and lawmakers, they put out year one of a 7-year plan. Can you describe what took place in that budget?
Absolutely. In a bipartisan agreement, they put forward the first payment in this 7-year plan of roughly $500 million to, again, close those adequacy gaps and help address the Commonwealth Court's ruling.
So, Sam, as a teacher, what was your reaction to that historic first-year budget, proposal solution?
I think it was deeply validating because the budget, the first installment of it, was the first time it really recognized that different districts have different challenges. In my school district, we were finally able to cement full-day kindergarten for our students, and we were able to add STEM instruction, which was important because we need to be able to respond to new requirements and standards in what we're teaching, and also just be able to prepare students for the future. So with different districts, you see different solutions in how that money is being used to appropriately address the actual needs of the students entering our classrooms. And so what this adequacy funding does is it actually gets teachers in classrooms working with students, and it's not just throwing money at a problem.
So do you think that this is having an impact on our students, not just in your school district, but across the state?
Yes, absolutely. In some of the districts around me, they were hiring reading specialists so that students can get that early intervention that they need, and just classroom teachers. I think we all can agree that you don't want to have students in class sizes that are ballooning out of control.
Yeah.
So,
really quickly, Mark, before we go to a break, do you think then that this money that's being invested last year, as well as we get into this year, is it maintaining programs, giving us an opportunity to bring in new staff in different areas, or maybe a combination of both?
It's really a combination of both. You're seeing districts protect investments like they've made in pre-K and in kindergarten, but you're also seeing districts committing to adding new staff to reduce class size or hire new professionals to help students who are struggling with reading or mathematics.
Okay. What we're going to be doing is we're going to a break. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. When we come back, we're going to talk about the current budget proposal, the debate that's going on right now, and what it means for school funding. So all that and a little bit more when we come back.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'm Aaron Chapin, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Price from the Pennsylvania State Education Association and educator Sam McNally, who is president of the Manheim Township Education Association. So let's talk what's going on right now. I'd like to talk about the current budget debate that's going on. Governor Shapiro has proposed a stellar budget when it comes to our funding education in Pennsylvania. It's year 2, Mark, of this. What exactly is the governor proposing in his year 2 proposal when it comes to education?
Absolutely. Most importantly, the governor has picked up where he left off last year and has proposed a second round payment in the adequacy payments that were intended to address the court's ruling of roughly $500 million. We are hearing some discussions in the General Assembly about eagerness to change the distribution. We're hopeful that legislators will understand they have a good plan and that they'll follow through and give us the 7-year commitment to close the adequacy gaps.
Of course, and again, that's what the court says we need to be doing in Pennsylvania. So the legislators need to follow through on that plan that obviously had some results. And Sam, what exactly do you think, is it important for us really to be sticking with this 7-year plan, in your opinion, as a local leader and as an educator?
Absolutely. In my conversations with our district business manager, they need stability in order to plan. So if we're going to continue to start to address the needs of the students in our classrooms and plan for staffing, whether that's making sure that our English learners actually have a teacher that they can work with, or a special education teacher, some of those caseloads are pretty high. Our school nurses see 1,500 students. Our school counselors, with all the mental health challenges that we are seeing, have caseloads around 500. So if we're going to start to work our way towards addressing those, they need this stability and to continue making those payments.
Well, I'm really glad that you brought up those different areas of our school systems. It's not just the classroom teachers. We're talking about all areas. And of course, our support staff as well. We need to be able to provide the funding so that we can have the support staff that we need to make our schools run.
Absolutely.
So, Mark, let's talk about another factor here. Obviously, there's debate that's going to go on in Harrisburg, but we've got, the issues that are going on at the federal level as well. And there's a lot of uncertainty, Mark. Can you elaborate on how this is going to be affecting our public schools?
Sure. We have a reconciliation bill now passed out of the House that fills in some of the details of what the president has proposed. It would cut taxes for families with incomes of over $500,000, which will drive up the national debt. But it also makes deep cuts in programs like Medicaid and also programs that provide food assistance to working families, sometimes called SNAP. And, as we expect, the Senate will likely make changes. If the Senate sticks with the outline that the House has put forward, what you're going to see in many of our local schools, you're going to see a lot of kids showing up who are hungry or sick or worried about a sick parent and not focused on what they should be, which is their learning. We're also very concerned that the House bill included a provision to divert billions of dollars from public education to a scheme to deliver vouchers to essentially affluent kids who attend private religious schools. And really thinking again about the adequacy plan and the commitment over 7 years, we're very concerned that the Medicaid cuts will sort of interfere with the state's ability to follow through on that plan.
Sam, what are you and your colleagues feeling about the uncertainty in Washington, D.C. and how this might impact your school district?
Yeah, it's concerning because our federal dollars go to our most vulnerable students, whether that's Title I, special education, or our English learners. But I'll tell you, in my career, I've lived through budget cuts before, and oftentimes what districts will do is they continue in good faith to try to maintain those programs that they're legally required to, and then other things go by the wayside, whether that's music or art or library, and I'd hate to see that.
Well, Mark and Sam, I really appreciate you being here. We could have talked a lot more about this. Thank you very much for all that you do. After the break, it is time to talk about our highways and bridges. It is construction season. We're going to talk a lot more about that when we come back.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'm Aaron Chapin, president of the Pennsylvania State Education Association. I am on the road quite a bit. I travel across the state meeting with educators and support professionals all across the Commonwealth, and I care a lot about the road conditions as well as our bridges, and so does Bob Latham. He is the executive president of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors, who is here with an update on all the infrastructure and transportation funding needs. It's a pleasure to have you, Bob.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be here with you. Transportation touches everybody. Roads and bridges touches everybody. Even if you don't drive, even if you never leave your house, you're dependent on a good, solid transportation system of all types, of all modes, in order to get goods and services to you. We have, of course, migrated, I guess, a little bit recently to what we call the distribution economy. Amazon, FedEx showing up at everybody's house on a regular basis. So we need to keep roads and bridges up to speed and keep them in good shape.
Well, and I'm sure we're going to get into that a lot more. Obviously, Pennsylvania, as I know and you know, it's a gigantic state, a lot of roads. We've got a lot of roads and bridges. Can you tell us, just give everybody out there an idea, how many miles of roads, highways, bridges we have?
Sure. Pennsylvania has about 40,000 miles of road that are maintained by PennDOT. Now, that sounds like a lot of roads, but you got to throw another 70,000 miles on top of that are maintained by local governments. So we have quite an extensive road and bridge system. Our geography is difficult on roads. Our weather. Most recently, some of the weather challenges, so we are prone to flooding, but we are also prone to freeze-thaw, and that plays havoc with concrete. So we have to upgrade our pavements, upgrade our bridges on a regular basis. PennDOT, our catch-all statistic is PennDOT maintains more roads than New York, New Jersey, and New England combined.
I did not know that. So, how about that? And there's the old joke out there that there's two seasons. So there's winter, and then there's construction season on the roads.
Pothole season.
Yeah, how about it?
You see the memes with people sunbathing in potholes and all that. But we're a state that is old, cold, and wet, and that creates freeze-thaw, and that creates potholes, and we have to continue upgrade our system.
So again, you kind of touched on this at the beginning. Obviously, our roads and bridges are in need of repair across the Commonwealth. Why is this so important to our economy and our quality of life as Pennsylvanians?
Well, again, as you see driving up and down our interstates, where you used to see farmland, you now see 1 million square foot distribution centers.
Yeah.
So we are the Keystone State. You have to come through here to get from the East Coast to the Midwest, or from the Northeast to the Southeast. So all roads come through Pennsylvania. We have 1,900 miles of interstate highway that has to be maintained, and of course all these local roads as well. Right now the situation is we have a good robust funding from the federal government for the major roads, but our local smaller volume roads are really hurting right now.
Yeah, we'll get into funding when we get into our next segment. But really, I think that what we also have to keep in mind is public transit also plays into that. Can you talk about that a little bit before we head into the break?
We need to understand we have to have a complete transportation system. That's public transit, railroads, ports, airports, as well as highways. And public transit is vitally important, particularly in our urban areas, but in every county in Pennsylvania.
So real quickly before we really go into our break, we've got federal funding that's an issue. We've got infrastructure law that provides billions of dollars. How are those funds restricted? Can you explain that briefly to us?
Sure. There is a system known as the National Highway System that's in federal law. Those funds are federal funds in those two acts that you talked about are restricted to those certain highways, mostly the interstates and major highways. We use state funds to match those federal funds. So we have to use our state funds that are generated here in Pennsylvania to match those funds, and in some cases that leaves us wanting on our local roads.
We're going to talk more about this, the funding and all that, but we need to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about our roads and bridges in Pennsylvania.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania American Water. We keep life flowing across the Keystone State.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'm here with Bob Latham. He's the Executive Vice President of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. That's a mouthful. So let's talk a bit more about transportation funding. Obviously a big part of the work that you do. What are you hoping to see the state lawmakers do to address the transportation and transit funding needs that you have going on right now?
Well, Eric, it's been about 14 years since we've had a major, robust, comprehensive, we say, transportation funding bill that address roads, bridges, dirt and gravel roads, local roads, et cetera, even aviation. So it's a holistic system. But right now, this really the issue revolves around public transit in particularly our urban areas in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, as well as, and then sort of conversely, out to the rural regions in their roads. So the folks in the urban areas are very, very dependent on a really good, robust public transit system. As everybody knows, next year is a confluence of things going on in Philadelphia. We've got soccer, we've got the 250th anniversary of the country, and a number of other things going on. So we need to be able to get people in and around Philadelphia so that we can showcase the Commonwealth and make sure that it's very successful and a great tourism experience for people coming. And then you go to the other side of the state, and Pittsburgh's hosting the NFL draft, which is a huge thing, and they need some assistance with their regional transit system there. So that's a budgetary issue right now. The governor's put forth a proposal on that. They're wrestling, lawmakers are wrestling with that, and we're hopeful that they'll come up with a solution that'll be good, make sure that those systems work very well.
I'm sure they would agree that Pennsylvania needs to put on the best show possible when 2026 is here.
Absolutely. On the other hand, then you have rural communities, more rural counties that where their citizens are wholly dependent on a good highway and bridge system, and the commerce there too. Small manufacturing operations, farmers,
Sure.
and the like. So it's important that they have good roads. If you have a bridge that's weight restricted, that is a severe impact on business in that community. So we need to make sure that we keep our bridges open. We've made a lot of progress since that bill I talked about earlier. We reduced our inventory of bad bridges from 6,000 to 3. But if we don't get additional funding into or some sort of financing into the capital program, those bad bridge inventories.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's talk about a short-term bonding program. It would be about $600 million annually. Can you talk about what that would do for our roads and bridges and maintaining them?
Sure. So we, over the years, I would say we've whittled down the amount of money coming from your gas tax, your registration fees, and those taxes that are presumably for road improvements that had been going to the general fund for the state police budget. That's been whittled down. There's still about $250 million left in there. We can use, if we shift that back to the motor license fund over whatever time period, we can use that to pay for a bond program, a short-term bond program, put about $600 million a year or $3 billion over 5 years into the capital improvement fund. Fix 75 to 80 more bridges a year with that, pave a couple hundred miles of roads with that, those local roads that we talked about. And it will allow us to continue these major projects that we have on the interstate system, match those federal funds, but still address the local needs that we've been talking about here today.
Obviously, this is impacting all areas, urban, suburban, and rural, and our economy. It just depends on, it depends on good roads.
Yep.
So obviously, and I think you mentioned it, I think it's important to really stress it. Over the last 15 years, there's been a lot of bridge repairs.
Absolutely.
A lot. And I've noticed it as I crisscross the state, and it thrills me to see it, because
we have one of the largest inventories of bridges of any state in the country. We have 25,000 bridges just on the state system alone. So again, look our geography. We've got a lot of lakes, rivers, and creeks and so forth, and you got to cross them. So, and the bridges have about a 70-year lifespan, and they wear out. They have to be replaced. But we've done a great job since that, what we called Act 89 in 2014. But that inventory could start to creep up again without maybe this infusion of cash through the bonding program we talked about.
How confident are you that you're going to get that money?
Well, I think it's vitally important, and our state leadership, Governor Shapiro, leadership in the General Assembly, I think are all aware of the situation.
Sure.
They're trying to come to an accommodation that works for public transit, works for roads and bridges, and works for the people of Pennsylvania. All
right, we got to head out shortly, so give me a prediction. Do you think we're going to have a budget done by June 30th? Real quick.
June 30th? No.
You're not that optimistic.
Not that optimistic. Before the end of July.
Well, thank you, Bob, for being here. And thank you for joining us at Pennsylvania Newsmakers. We hope to see you back here again real soon. Thank you.